Hello and welcome to the Full Advisor Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen Herod. And today we are going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart and pretty much the culmination of my career to date. So the fact that we actually get to talk about this today is extremely energizing to me. And luckily, I have one of the most well-known and experienced people in the industry to be able to have this conversation with. Today, I'm excited to welcome Bill Cates. Welcome, Bill.
You and not Bill Gates. I missed it by one letter and a few $1 billion, but what's a few billion among friends, right?
Exactly. Bill's the president of Referral Coach International. So I know he's quite made a name in the industry around referrals. He's written multiple books. I mean, Get More Referrals Now, Beyond Referrals, Language of Referrals, Radical Relevance. That's all over the place. You founded the Cates Academy for Relationship Marketing. Mm-hmm. And I know that you're the host of the Top Advisor podcast, which, is one of the top rank. I can aspire to be like you, Bill.
And you're going to be on that podcast. We're going to interview you for my folks. So
I'm looking forward to that as well. You've been an entrepreneur for so many years now, 30 plus years, built and sold a few book publishing companies.
Right.
I don't even want to sell this short, but I think people will tell as we get into the interview just the depth of your experience and what you can bring to the table. But this is the Full Advisor Coaching Podcast, so I do like to also touch on, the personal life. What makes you an interesting human? What makes you excited? And one of the things I know you've done, Bill, is reach the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. Sounds like you're a bit of an adventurer.
Yeah, I am. I've done a few things. Kilimanjaro, one of the coolest. I've camped in the Arctic Circle. I've lived on a houseboat in Kashmir, India. I've been to Everest Base Camp.
Ooh, cool.
I seem to keep going to these cold places.
I was going to say, what about Antarctica? Have we been there yet?
No, I have not. It's on the list. And, a lot of my travel adventure buddies are kind of falling by the wayside. They don't want to do these things anymore. And so now my wife and I went bicycling in Vietnam a couple years ago, and that was great. So
that's great. Wonderful.
So my wife will do some things, but she won't camp. So, she'll do some adventures, but not the camping side of it. So anyway.
Yes, yeah. And I know that you've been helping financial advisors for a really long time, but you did have your career in a rock and roll band. So tell us about that.
I did. Yeah, I'm an old rock and roll drummer.
I love
out of college, toured the country for a couple years. Not a band anybody would have heard, but had a lot of fun. Not something I wanted to do forever. And in fact, truth be told, I did a little talent assessment a few years in, and I thought, I'll probably be playing Holiday Inns the rest of my life if I don't make a shift here. So, I was pretty good, but not the next level. And I moved on.
Well, very cool experience for sure.
It was, yes.
We love, we're all the sum of our experience, and that's fun. It's
true.
At least a fun story to tell, and I'm sure there's a lot you can draw on from that.
Yes.
But most importantly, or relevant to our audience, is that you've helped thousands and thousands, probably tens of thousands of financial advisors and professionals be able to attract in their right fit clients. And I know you have a system that you've created around that. I'm really interested to get into the details around it. But my favorite thing about the way you even talk about it is that you talk about marketing as relationship marketing. And that is what I essentially have always felt my career has been in, which is relationship marketing. I did not realize there was a different kind of marketing. And then I realized, as I got into working in the financial advice industry and all that, it became clear to me that that language perhaps was not universal yet. And odd in an industry where the relationship is the business, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that the business grows at the speed of relationships. And look, every even digital marketing, there is a relationship to be had, if you will. They're trying to create a relationship. I shouldn't say the problem. The challenge, particularly in financial services, is that we're trying to reach out to people and start relationships with folks, not usually in the way they want to meet us, right? So,
Oh, that's true. Right.
right. So there's this rush to digitize everything, and it has its place. I like to kind of blend the two a little bit. So I have a program, for instance, where I help advisors with their value proposition, and we use AI as part of that process. So
great.
I'm not against it, but the way I see it is, let's build a business based on how people want to meet us. And especially when you move up the ladder of affluence, that's usually through an introduction, a recommendation from someone they already trust. That's the way we're most relevant to that new prospect. I was coaching a guy earlier today, and he's thinking about going into a new market for his advisory practice. And he says, how do I approach that market? I said, well, the first place to look is, what relationships do you have in place with your clients, with other folks? And that's the first step, is what relationships. Yeah, a friend of mine calls it relationship capital. How can you leverage that relationship capital? Now, you can do other things. You can do digital stuff. You can build reputation. You can create other things. But the beginning is the relationship side, if that makes sense.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think it's the beginning, and it's the objective, if you will, like ultimately to create a relationship with someone who is the right fit for you, so that, you're putting, and I think digital can come into play there as people start to hear about you from an introduction, and they want to do a little bit of their own research, and they're looking at you online, and they're looking at different things. You're telling a story through all those channels, but I don't think you want to leave that as the only way that someone has to get to know you. I think it's kind of evidence to support the introduction or the relationships that you have.
Yes.
So,
and look, some people are having some success, and it depends a little on the model of their business. I mean, let's take LinkedIn for a second. If not done properly, LinkedIn is the new cold calling. It's just the digital side of cold calling, if not done properly. I like to make a joke that the people making the most money with LinkedIn are the people trying to sell you a course on how to make money with LinkedIn.
it's true.
With that, said, there are some people having some success, but it's typically the people that have a very clear target market. And so therefore, the content they post, the things they say, the questions they might ask someone with a LinkedIn conversation, it's just so much more relevant because they know that person. They have more context than if you just kind of shotgun approach to really anybody that's got a buck. So again, it's the power of the relationship that informs the other kind of marketing that you're going to do.
Right. Absolutely. And so let's kind of take a step back, because I know reputation is really important. Relevance is really important. You have, when you're teaching relationship marketing, you have a process that focuses on 3 core strategies.
Right.
Let's kind of give an overview of that, and then we can dig into them and help advisors understand more about what they are.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so it's 3 R's. Alliteration is nice when you create models so people can remember. So the first one is relevance. I wrote a book called Radical Relevance. It's all how we talk about our value, how we pick our target market, how we figure out what makes us a little different, and then how we communicate that to others, the words we use, some principles of marketing that a lot of advisors are never taught. Most advisors are taught how to prospect, but they're not taught how to market. So that's the relevant side. And then the next R is reputation. And that's really when we can shift from kind of a prospecting orientation to an attraction orientation by creating a reputation in a very clear, well-defined target market. We can go deeper with that in a minute, but everything gets easier when you have that. And then referrals, which is what I've been teaching forever and ever,
Right.
is a form of prospecting. I think kind of a high form. And so any one of those strategies, having more relevant messaging, having a reputation in the market, getting better at referrals and introductions, any one of those is going to create some growth and create some movement in the direction you want. But what I like to say is when you put 2 or 3 of those together, then the sum is greater than the parts. And
Yes.
and that's where you create exponential growth. So the others will create incremental growth, but when you put 2 or 3 together, now you're moving towards faster growth, really, and scaling and multiplying your best clients. So that's the essence of the model.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And the exponential growth, I see that 100% with the overlay. I've spoken about it in previous episodes, and I talked about it a lot of what I call the business development ecosystem, where we look at marketing, sales, client experience, the overlay, and
Yes,
similar concept to what you're talking about here. So I'm with you 100% on this. And I actually think the guide you have could be a great resource for advisors on this, your exponential growth guide. Tell us a little bit about that real quick, because I don't want people to miss out on that.
thank you. And it's free. I like to say free, but valuable. Because free doesn't necessarily, people say free. Well, so if you just go to exponentialgrowthguide.com, exponentialgrowthguide.com, you can tap into it. It's free. And it'll give you a really nice overview. It also is, if you want to share what we're talking about with your team, that's one way to do it as well. And it's a way to get into my world a little bit, and happy to serve and help any way I can. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just kind of sets the big picture for people who are really interested in that. And then we can, let's look at each of the elements. I know that I originally heard about you and was introduced to you as being the referral guy. Right. And I know that's selling your skills short. So, but I do want to spend time on that. So we will get to that part number 3, because I think people trip up on that. But I agree with you 100% that advisors forget about the marketing piece, right? They forget about the relevance, about the target audience, about finding the avatar. So let's talk about that first. I know you talked about this in Radical Relevance, but what do you mean by radical?
Well, what I mean by radical is, and to some marketers, what I teach, it really isn't radical. But to financial advisors,
please,
it is kind of radical, just because they don't usually get taught these things.
Right.
So really it boils down to, if I had to put it into one word, it would be empathy. And what I mean by that is really, 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 emphasis on really, getting to know your right fit clients. Sometimes they call it avatars. Sometimes they call it personas. Same thing, right fit clients. And to know, to be so clear for yourself on who you serve the best and who you're trying to attract, and to then be able to articulate that to other people. And so in the book, Radical Relevance, I talk about strategic relevance, which is deciding who you serve the best. Do you want to zero in on a target market? And can you have more than one market and all that kind of stuff? And what is your differentiator? And by the way, the fact that you care about your clients and provide customized solutions and deliver great service is not a differentiator.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not saying you shouldn't talk about those things. You should. They're important.
Right.
But they're not a differentiator.
Right.
And then the tactical side of relevance, tactical relevance, is how do you communicate? What are the actual words? We have a little process we put people through to how to figure out what words will I actually use to say what do I do and how do I do it and what makes me a little different than some of the other folks out there, et cetera. So that's the essence of the relevant side. And the bottom line is, look, if you're not relevant, if your prospects don't see what you're saying as relevant, as empathetic, meaning you have an appreciation and understanding for them, if they don't see themselves just a little bit in how you talk about what you do, then they'll ignore you.
Right.
They won't. We got too much marketing message overload, right? We ignore things
Right.
that just don't seem. The brain is automatically sorting relevant, not relevant. Should I pay attention to not? Is it dangerous? Is it helpful? Relevant, not relevant. And
Right.
so we got to be. And then on to add to that, we also have to be compelling with how we talk about. We have to be able to move people forward with our messaging, and it's almost like alternating current. It's like we got to be relevant and compelling, and relevant and compelling, and it goes together. In fact, I was when I wrote the book, I had a guy who was brainstorming with me. He says it has to be compellevant.
I love
And
that.
I go, well, yeah, I don't use that term much because it violates the principle of marketing. That is to talk about things that are already in the brain that people understand.
Right.
But
Right.
it's a continual effort to. Otherwise, people will ignore us or people won't pay attention. So that's what I mean by relevance and radical relevance.
Right. And I actually, I remember when I got into the financial planning field, I started my own RIA back in 2005, 2006. And I had come from the marketing world. And it was very confusing to me. And people who've listened to this podcast have heard me say this many times, but that you wouldn't pick a target audience. Like I didn't know why, people would come up to and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm working with new and expectant parents and families with young children. Most of my families have a child at home who is below the age of 5. They're dealing with how to make that transition from being partners to parents. I had all these talking points and I'd talk about the, pain points. And so to me, I was like, well, of course, this is what everyone does. And then I looked at the marketplace and was like, oh, we don't. Oh, okay. No one has yet revealed that to our industry. I see. So, and that's changed. That was 20 years ago. But to the point, there are, as you've seen, you've been doing this 30 plus years. It can be scary to try to pigeonhole, like the fear is pigeonholing when it's actually just helping getting your message and making the right kind of introductions and makes it easier for the person to know if you are the right kind of person, right kind of advisor for them. I used to say you don't want to be put in the general file of financial professional, not even financial advisor, but financial professional. You want to be, you want someone to find that specific folder in their head where they filed you into like, oh, person who can help me save money for college for my child or something like that. You want to be very specific.
It's also helpful too for centers of influence like accountants, attorneys, and other folks that might send business to us. They need to know where we are and what makes us different and who we serve the best. So they know whether they should introduce us or somebody else in the industry. And we know that not all accountants and attorneys are very good at making introductions, but some are. And they do want to know that.
Yes.
So yeah, being able to articulate that is very, very, very important.
Right. I think that's a whole nother episode too on just how you can help get the right kind of introductions and relationships with COIs so that you are getting quality over quantity.
Right.
All right. So we have relevance. Then we get into reputation. Yes. So tell me about that. Yes.
Yeah. So the idea of a target market, by the way, working with folks that are 5 to 7 years out of retirement, that is not a target market.
Also not a target market. Yes.
It's a category. Mm-hmm. Now, when you put that with a market together, it can be very powerful. So one of my coaching clients has now become Dennis O'Keefe. His market is Verizon employees.
I love that. Yep.
Okay. And so he's built a reputation for himself, particularly in South River, Massachusetts, among Verizon employees. And he's doing very, very well. Now, his category is people that are 5 to 7 years from retirement. He helps them navigate into a successful retirement. So you put the two together, it's very, very powerful. Typical target markets, employees in a large company like that. Mm-hmm. Could be business owners in a specific industry. Generally speaking, the narrower the better. Now, it depends a little bit if you're in a small town unless you're going to go national or regional, then maybe not too narrow. Medical practices, obviously, university, faculty, administrators, pretty typical. People. Now, here's a couple of groups that I call them affinity groups, not typical target market, but still can work very well, which would be athletes is one.
That's a good one.
Another could be parents who have children with special needs.
Okay.
Could be another one. And there's a few of those. Even women could be considered a target market, particularly women in transition.
Yeah, though I'd push back and say which kinds of transition, what stage of life are they in? I try to take advisors a little tighter on that simply because half the population is women. So it's like, okay, then we take women in transition. Okay, are we talking divorce?
Right.
Are we talking widow? Are we talking a different kind of transition? So,
the narrower
but I'm
the
with
better.
you on that. Yes, I'm with you on that for sure.
And the reason why narrower the better is because your messaging will be more relevant. Right?
Exactly.
You
100%.
understand their world better. They will see that in your messaging. They'll see the benefits of working with you. That's a differentiator that matters. In my book, Radical Relevance, I have the 17 rules of radical relevance, and one of them is only differences that matter.
I like that. Okay.
The fact that you focus on employees in a specific company and you know their benefits package probably better than their HR department does, that's a difference that actually matters and will attract people towards you. There's other differences that are more general that, they're nice, that might create a little interest, but really don't matter that much. So,
right.
And in a target market, it's easier to get more referrals and introductions because they know people like themselves. They see that you're focusing on people like themselves. They can see opportunity for you. They kind of bird dog a little bit for you sometimes.
Right.
That's how these all interplay with each other. You can't help but get more referrals if you target a specific market. You can't help but, get more referrals if you talk about your value in a way that's more relevant to people.
Right. Absolutely. And you don't have to have the list of like this or that, or if you need that, and you don't have to keep trying to explain how your things fit to each and every, if you have multiple audiences and you're a small firm and you're trying to be like, or unless you could also have, in case this person, and you're like, all right.
Well, the mistake that people make is they try to quite often, and it's almost human nature, and I have to guard against this myself, is to cast a wider net. So when we're doing any kind of marketing initiative, we don't want to leave these folks out. We don't want to leave these folks out, right? So the net starts to get a little bit bigger, and the problem is the marketing initiative becomes less effective because the messaging is less effective because you're trying to speak to too many disparate types of folks.
Right.
So really, if you have more than one right fit client, if you have 2 or 3 types of avatars or personas, that's fine. Just have programs and website pages and all of that devoted to the specific ones, so you're not watering down everything to try to talk to all of them at the same time.
Right.
So
I've seen that. I've seen that backfire, and having been the person in charge of marketing for a firm that, say, one of my larger firms, they come in like, well, we do endowments and we do retirement plans for bigger, for companies, but we also have individual services. And then within the individual, and I'm like, okay, we only have so many resources here and so many places to put our time, money, and energy. Let's hone these messages. We got to keep it one thing, one problem, one solution. One problem, one solution. Let's keep it clear. I think that's really important. And we have talked. I beat that drum a lot. I love when others come on. We had Kristen Luke on, who I know you know. Who she came on early on in episode 5 and talked about picking a niche and all the things you're talking about here. So I 100% back on this. And I think advisors, when they embrace it, they see how much easier it is. It's easier to determine who to reach out to, what kind of COIs, what kind of messaging to use, what articles to write, what videos to record, what books to write. It's just like, oh, so everything's so much easier.
It is. And I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed for my podcast and talked to that have said, I wish I had done this 5 years ago. I wish I had done this earlier in my career. It's just, and I encourage anyone listening, if you know anyone who has established a reputation, talk to them about it. Right. And I pretty much could almost guarantee that they're going to say, yeah, I should have started earlier.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. It has made everything a little bit easier.
Yes, absolutely. And then it also makes referrals easier, yes, as it were, or as yes. I know that referral is not necessarily the word that you want to use. However, quick callback to what I heard you say earlier is people want to hear the words that they're already familiar with. And we as advisors are like, oh, how do we get referrals? Exactly. Even though that's probably not the consumer facing word, but it is the industry word.
So if I can put some meat on that one, I believe personally, because it's just so hard to reach people these days, and and because word of mouth is nice, but it doesn't create a connection necessarily, that we should be using either the word introduction or connection. And so I favor introductions. Let's talk about folks you may feel comfortable introducing me to. How would you like to introduce me to her? Or we could say, let's talk about creating a good connection. Almost one and the same. But, the word referral, first of all, to a lot of people has a negative connotation, and not just the public, but even advisors. Right, the way they've been taught in the past, they go, I don't want to look like that cheesy referral guy.
Right, right.
So then people ask me, okay, Bill, if really it's introductions we should be using, why is your R referrals, and why did you write a book called The Language of Referrals? Right. Well, and let's get to that principle of marketing that I know you know. The principle is whenever we talk about our messaging, we really, in most cases, want to use language, words, concepts that are already in the brains of the receiver of that message, right? Now, if we use a word or a concept that isn't in the brain, we stand the chance of confusing them. Or we had better define it quickly. Right. So fiduciary is a word that's being used more and more, as it should be. It's good. It's important. But most people don't know what that means. Right. So if you use it, you better define it quickly. Same thing with holistic advisor. That's more and more. We're a holistic advisor. So, some people give lip service to it. They aren't really holistic. But on the other hand.
But the people who are great. Like it's like a phenomenal value. So you need to make sure you can get over that obstacle quickly.
Yeah, my friend Zamira Jones, he talks about the billboard effect. It's like you're driving down the road and you see a billboard. It's got a message, and it might be clever, might be cute, make you laugh, but you don't quite get it. You have to ponder, and then you get it, and you've already passed the exit. Yeah. So we've got to make sure that I'm all for clever and cute and creative. Nothing wrong with that, but we can't let that get in the way of the clarity. Clarity has to triumph over, cuteness and creativity. If we can marry the two together a little bit, that's great. But clarity should be the best. Should be the first.
I agree, and you have to spend a lot of energy and effort trying to brand a new phrase or position or teaching that. And so to ride the coattails of what people already understand and learn, and then talk about how you're different, what's your value, what do you bring to the table? Right. All right. So if I'm an advisor, how am I thinking about referrals or introductions? What's the secret sauce? Because this is a scary area. I mean, when I had my firm, I was like, no way am I doing this. Terrified of it.
All right. So there's so much we can unpack here, but let me start out with where you need to come from when you approach this. And I alluded to this a little bit already, is the way referrals have often been taught in the past has been a very advisor-centered process. I get paid in 2 ways. I get paid in 3 ways if you do planning. or I'm trying to build my business. I could really use your help. It's advisor centered when it really should be value and client centered. And so, bottom line, I ask everybody is your value worth sharing? Do you believe your value is worth sharing? And how do you know? Well, one barometer of that is you're getting unsolicited referrals or introductions.
Sure.
Obviously, somebody thinks it's worth sharing, but it's got to come from that. It's got to come from believing in your value. It's got to come from who's the next person to receive this value. It's almost, some people like to say it's kind of a service we provide our clients. And I think it's true. But if you just see it all about you because you were kind of taught that way, then you got to flip that switch. You got to make it about them, and you got to make it about paying forward. Who's next to get this value? So it starts there. All right, it's coming from that place. Now, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. A lot of people believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness. It's not. And in this case, we're asking for help to help others. So it still is paying it forward. So I need to hit that because that's one of the biggest mindset shifts that need to take place for a lot of folks. And with people I coach, it can take 2, 3, 4 coaching calls for them to fully internalize that.
Right.
Because forever they never thought of it that way. And so it takes a while to get through that, right? So that's one thing. I'd like to talk about principles because when you understand the principles, then the strategies and tactics often fall into place. So one of the principles is you got to be referable. Well, how do you know you're referable? Well, I mentioned unsolicited referrals. That's one barometer. We also teach, you're becoming referable when value's been delivered and value's been recognized. All right. So how do you know value's been recognized? Number one, you're hearing thank yous. You're hearing heartfelt thank yous. Always feel better after we meet. Thanks for explaining, how annuities work. I never understood it. Thank you for going to bat for me with underwriting. Thank you for, all of that.
Right.
All the thank yous, all the hugs, value recognizing statements. So what do you do with those? Well, can you leverage those? Can you be appropriately proactive? And so we talk about encouraging and promoting the possibility of introductions from there. And then probably one of the most powerful things that I've been teaching for 30 years, and I want to give you a very concrete example of how this plays out, how it played out recently for a coaching client, is what I call a value discussion. And that is an open-ended conversation, open-ended check-in with prospects and clients about the value they're perceiving from the meeting or from the process or from the relationship. And when you do that and you have a nice give and take and they get in touch with the value, that is like an ideal place to think about taking the next step and being proactive. So let me tell you about John Landry. John has given me permission to use his name, talk about this situation. So one of the things, one of his homework things was to start doing this value discussion a little bit more with his clients. And I was given a speech, and at the break, I got an email from John. He says, I just did a value discussion with a client. It turns out that she's told a lot of people about me. I haven't heard from any of them. So per your instruction, Bill, I talked to her about how to do it better. And, So what happened from the value discussion is John found an advocate that he didn't even know he had just by checking in.
Right.
How are we doing? Right? What's working for you? And open-ended conversation. So, boy, just doing those check-ins, just checking about expectations, matching, it's huge. And that sets up the rest of the conversation quite nicely. So that's a few things. I mean, we can go deeper if you want, but that's a couple of things.
So if I'm having that value conversation with a client and I'm learning from them, how do you pivot to then an introduction? How does one, flip that conversation?
Yeah, let me kind of model it for you a little bit. So let's say it's a decision to start to work with you. And either you're going to do a financial plan, or maybe they're transferring some assets, maybe a little bit of both. You can say, look, first of all, Kristen, I think you made a great decision. I think you'll be happy with the decision. And I know there was a lot to consider. We talked about a lot of different things. And I'm just curious, what tipped the scales? What made you decide to move forward with this important work? And so that's an open-ended question, right? You'll
great.
talk a little bit about it, kind of reinforces your decision, which isn't bad. And I'll say, great, I'm glad so far so good. Obviously lots more to do. Yeah, I know I mentioned earlier on that I'm kind of on a mission to bring this important work to folks. I think that everybody deserves to make educated financial decisions that are in their best interest. So I was hoping we could put our heads together for a couple of minutes and see if we can identify a few folks, and knowing that whatever we do, it'll be comfortable for everybody. But I have a few ideas I'd love to run by a couple of people you mentioned in a previous meeting, and a couple categories of folks we do some good work for. In fact, you're in one of those categories. And a lot of times people say, oh, who did I mention? Or what category am I in? And
Right.
So we're coming prepared. I'm letting you know I've come prepared. The worst way to do this, I suppose it's better than nothing, everybody knows where I'm going with this, is to throw it open to the whole universe. Who do you know could benefit from the work we do? Who else should know about this important work? Yada, yada. Look, it is better than nothing because at least it enters it into the conversation, into the relationship. But in terms of creating results, it usually fizzles. Usually nothing happens at that time. Sometimes people later will think of someone, and that's cool. So this is a little counterintuitive to a lot of folks, but the principle behind this is the narrower the better. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our client or even prospect to visualize in their mind's eye, to picture people they know. So if we come specific people, your sister and brother-in-law, they'll kind of picture those folks. If we use categories of money in motion, life events, they'll often picture somebody in that. And if they picture those people, then they're more likely to bring that name forward, and we'll talk about them, and we'll see if it makes sense to create a comfortable introduction to them. So that's a sense of what it looks like. It's I'm being proactive, I'm being purposeful, I'm prepared, but I'm not pushy. Hey, I just used a bunch of P's there.
You did. That's really, I think you have a new framework there.
I do. Purposeful, proactive, prepared, but not pushy.
Yeah,
and it's a balance, right?
Right.
If you don't want to have this conversation, we're not going to have it.
Yeah, you can read people on that. I think that's.
You can.
But you also should give them the opportunity. And it's interesting what you've said, because I've always, I originally thought about referrals back, when I first got in this business, people talk about who else do you know who's like you, naming, people got into like friends, family. But I think what I've learned from working with larger firms over time now is that when we have kind of that one pager that says, hey, these are the common situations and problems we solve, and you're working with a client who perhaps hasn't needed one of those services, but they're unaware that you'd actually do that, it's an opportunity to say, hey, I know this one is something we haven't either yet gotten to for you, or this is something that, hasn't applied for your situation, but I just want to make sure, if you know anyone who can benefit, who's going through a divorce, right? That we offer this period of time. It's not something relevant for you, So I've found that to be an interesting, when people go, oh, I didn't realize you did that, or oh, my sister's just found out she has to get an attorney, and then you're like, okay.
Yeah, your clients know people that you can help. They just don't realize they know people sometimes.
Right.
Because they don't know how to spot it. They don't know what's going on in their life to kind of put two and two together. And so we help them a little bit. And look, the worst thing that happens, whether you use the general, never, too busy if you know anybody, or getting specific, and they don't want to go there for whatever reason. The worst thing that happens is you've planted the seed for a future. And I suspect everybody listening has at some point in time asked for introductions, referrals. Client didn't want to go there. And some of those folks, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years later say, hey, I got somebody for you. Yeah. So the worst thing it does is it plants a seed. And what we want our clients to know at the end of the day, that we're never too busy to see. Operative words, to see. Those are the qualifying words. Never too busy to see if we can be a resource for other people you care about. That's the essence of what we're trying to do here, but being a little more purposeful around that. So,
Yeah, I can definitely see how when we take, you kind of think of referrals alone, you're like, oh, for the advisors who only, I can't tell you how many I've been. It's like, well, we grow from referrals. Like, that's great. Love
Yeah.
it. But imagine and
Nice for you. Thank you. Good. Thanks for
Yes.
telling me how you get paid. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I know. But imagine the exponential growth, to use your words, that advisors can get if they are looking at all three of these areas, right?
Yes.
Reputation, referrals, relevance, the wrap up of the relationship marketing, and kind of thinking about it in that way and thinking from top to bottom, or the full circle, as I like to think about it, of being able to grow from various points of the client experience, depending on where people are in their relationship with you.
That's good.
What do you usually see, like, as advisors start putting in place? I know you've shared a few of the stories. Thank you for sharing specifics. What are the outcomes that they're getting from putting these steps in place? What can we get excited about?
Well, I think we can get excited about the ultimate goal that every advisor has, at least that I work with, is, how do we meet more of the right people as efficiently as possible, time efficiently and cost efficiently or cost effectively as possible. That's kind of what everybody wants, and that's what this work does. And so it's funny. With folks I coach, and you've probably seen it with folks you coach as well, when you start to just get your mindset around some of these principles and you start to see what's possible, and slowly you start to change your language and how you interact with your clients around this, the advisors start to get results almost sooner than they expected. I this past week, I've had 2 different coaching clients say, Bill, we're just getting started and I'm getting more referrals. I don't know what's going on. I said, well, here's what's going on. You're in subtle ways, what you're saying and doing and how you're reacting to things your clients are saying and doing have changed. You didn't even realize it's subtle. And so all of a sudden you're starting to create the dynamic. Now imagine what you can do as we get even more. What were my words? Purposeful, proactive, prepared, and not pushy, right?
Yeah,
I wrote those
exactly.
down, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's happened. So that's the goal. And I mean, I had a guy once that he said, Bill, I need more referrals. I need more referrals. Okay, good. How many are you getting? Oh man, I'm getting like 30 a month, but I need more. I go, hello? Are they the right kind? Well, some are. Are they converting very well to new clients? Well, right. So he didn't need more referrals.
Right. He needed better referrals.
He needed better connections, better introductions, right? He needed the quality to improve, not the quantity. Right. And for most folks listening, that's really what they want. Most folks aren't the machines of trying to do a gazillion clients in a year. Right. They want right fit clients. Right. And so that's what this process will do. You start to talk about your value in a way that will attract the people that you want. And I hate to use this word, but will repel the people you don't want.
Yes.
Right. And that's what you want to do, right?
It's true.
You want
100%.
to attract the people that are right for you, so you're right for them.
Right. I mean, and then in the sort of guise of the whole, the way I like to frame it for advisors is think how much more fulfilling and fun and enjoyable your work's going to be.
Oh, imagine that. Actually fun and joy.
It's like, oh, wow. I love seeing these people. I can't wait to have a meeting with them. I look forward to their calls. Imagine that. So that's an exciting piece of all this.
Can I give you an example? You were looking for examples.
Yeah, sure.
So let me talk about Johannes Harrison. He got into my stuff years ago, and then I interviewed him recently for my podcast, not even knowing he was kind of a student of my teachings. And so his target market is emergency room physicians.
Okay.
He's a member of emergency room physician associations. He just knows their world. He speaks their language. They see that. Mm-hmm. But he traced his clients, where they came from. And he looked back and he could see that most of his clients that he has now can be, directly or indirectly traced back to about 3 or 4 key clients early in his career. And so now he's starting to celebrate these folks. He calls them his kings and queens.
That's
He
great.
also has dukes and duchesses.
Oh.
Now, look, this nomenclature, this style isn't for everybody, but the principles are sound. And
Right.
so a duke and a duchess to Johans is someone who's given him at least 2 referrals. A king and queen, they've done 3 or more. And he's doing special events now for these folks, for these advocates. Some advisors I work with create ambassador groups, advocate groups. And so they're doing special events for these folks and celebrating this. And all that does is create more opportunity and for this to happen. So it's just a classic example of how it all fits together.
I love that. That's a great example. And creative. I've never heard that terminology, and I think it sounds a little more elegant and fun.
And it fits him and his group.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, and it fits who they are, and that's fantastic. So
Exactly. I
love it. Well, Bill, this is fascinating to me. I love talking about this. I look forward to joining you on your podcast. But in the meantime, as advisors want to learn more, find out more about your coaching or get your books, where's the best place for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah. First of all, reminder of exponentialgrowthguide.com. It's free. Go get that. CoachCates.com, CATES, CoachCates.com. You'll learn a little bit about coaching. And another place to get a bunch of free but valuable resources is referralcoach.com/resources. Referralcoach.com/resources. Lots of good stuff, free but valuable.
Great. Yes. Thanks so much for joining us. And for everyone listening in today, a reminder that if you hit that subscribe button, you'll get notified as soon as the next episode drops. And as always, we absolutely 100% appreciate if you tell a friend you find this valuable and you share the episode. And if you're really feeling into it, we invite you to give a review. And with that, you can always find me at fulladvisorcoaching.com and out on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation. And until next time, I invite you to go out and make it a great day or not. It's your choice. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to Full Advisor Coaching, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the follow button so you'll never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can become a part of the Full Advisor community, visit fulladvisorcoaching.com. Remember, stay connected and get notified as soon as brand new episodes release. Click the follow button now. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Kristen Harrod or Full Advisor Coaching.